Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to speak today to Mr Patterson's motion and agree that infrastructure planning is vital to keeping up with and planning ahead for population growth. Good planned infrastructure is vital to ensure that Canberra becomes and remains a great place to live. And the people of Canberra, I think we all agree, deserve the best when it comes to infrastructure. They deserve infrastructure that's reflective of our diverse community. And the people of Canberra deserve infrastructure that is as inclusive of everyone, no matter what part of Canberra they live in, and also leaves visitors remembering what made Canberra such a great place. Cities are more than the sum of their infrastructure. They transcend brick and mortar, concrete and steel. They're the vessels into which human knowledge is poured. And that's a quote from Rick Yancey, Madam Speaker. And you'll know yourself, you go to a particular site, possibly a building, and it's really memorable for you. And what is it that makes it memorable? If it's part of the built environment, it may be one of those grand, world-renowned, beautiful properties. It may have a charming lobby, lovely rooms, and it's been there for decades, and people remember visiting that particular building well, long after the time, while others fade away. And that starts, Madam Speaker, with a vision. And it's backed up by, of course, planners, architects, builders, a whole lot of other specialists, good advice and, of course, capital. It must also be followed up with an ongoing commitment to evolve and adapt in the modern world. So the infrastructure motion that we have from Mr Patterson today, I think, reminds us that communities continually demand better infrastructure. And as politicians, elected representatives, we increasingly see major infrastructure initiatives as the centrepiece of budget announcements and policy platforms. It's a topic everyone likes to talk about, but sometimes disagree on, or even frequently disagree on. Such as, at the last election, the government went to the election with the idea to build the tram. But, Madam Speaker, a focus on infrastructure isn't in itself a guarantee of better outcomes. The focus needs to be on the right areas to get the right results. And what we've seen sometimes in the past decade or more here, Madam Speaker, is a lack of emphasis on the planning phase. There's no question that everyone's keen to get to the implementation and delivery phase. People love the high-vis jackets and turning the first sod with a special shovel and having cyclone fencing around. It's an opportunity for a lovely photo opportunity for those opposite. But often we see they haven't taken the time to get the planning right. What we then see, of course, is some really well-documented cost blowouts. And if more planning had gone into these projects, this may not have been the case. Just one amongst a myriad of examples to choose from, Madam Speaker, may be the Gungahlin Drive extension. Very well publicised, huge cost blowouts. Other planning failures that we've seen more recently include the addition of what was already known to be inflammable cladding on the Women and Children's Centenary Hospital building. So what we're seeing a lack of, Madam Speaker, is the link between planning and delivery. Another part of getting infrastructure planning and delivery right, Madam Speaker, is consultation with the public, working with others and a range of views, not just those who agree with you, will generally lead to a better outcome. There's no point surrounding yourself with what we may refer to as yes men, because you don't see an alternate view and you get a silo effect. By engaging with communities and stakeholders in an open and meaningful way right from the start, we can better develop the evidence-based, test ideas and challenge assumptions. The key here, I've spoken about it many times, is open and meaningful consultation. Not secrecy. Access to information and making information readily available helps build understanding of the issues and opportunities. It brings people on board with projects, Madam Speaker. And having genuine and honest consultation gives transparency, builds trust in the work and in turn the decision. Once again, Madam Speaker, I'll give you one example, and that was the proposal, the thought bubble at the time, of a new suburb of Thomson near the Tuggeranong Town Centre. A lack of consultation, a lack of planning, just an announcement on the spur of the moment. Huge community backlash from that particular announcement, Madam Speaker. It demonstrates that this government is not consulting with people. The announcement of the proposed new suburb of Thomson had no connection whatsoever with the Tuggeranong Town Centre Master Plan, a process which had gone through not all that long before. So people rightly become suspicious of consultation processes if what happens during those processes is ignored and something else completely different comes along. Madam Speaker, back in 2013, the government undertook a big consultation on the City to the Lake project, and it included a new stadium, new 50-metre pool, apartments along the lake, and a much-needed new convention centre. But as time has gone on, the City to the Lake project is looking less and less like the one people were consulted on. We've seen in more recent times the government has downgraded the 50-metre pool to a smaller leisure pool and city beach on the lakeside. In February of this year, the Chief Minister shelved the convention centre, and in March he backflipped on his promise of the new stadium. So in 2017, the City to the Lake project, once a grand plan, has now become apartment blocks and a boardwalk. Madam Speaker, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with the change of plans per se. Plans do change. Infrastructure planning must have some flexibility in it. But the government should have gone back to the community to consult about this. The big plan of stadiums and convention centres and pools is very, very different to what we're now seeing being delivered at the lakefront. Sir Robert Menzies is remembered for creating the lake, which is now one of the centrepieces of our city, the largest purely ornamental lake in the world, as I understand it. Equally, the Chief Minister can be now remembered for not only filling in a piece of that lake for a boardwalk, but depriving the people of Canberra of the vista that's the West Basin and Acton Peninsula to allow units to be built there without constructing the assets and amenities that were previously promised with this project. Madam Speaker, also in Mr Pedersen's motion, it makes reference to education infrastructure, that the government is spending more money in ACT schools to expand their capacity. Obviously, this is a positive thing. It's no secret that our schools in the ACT are under enormous enrolment pressure, and that the ACT government needs to better manage the education system in order to cope. We have the government trying to rezone school halls and libraries as classrooms so as to allow more students to enter each school. Of course, Madam Speaker, we may not be under such pressure if it hadn't been for Mr Barr's decision to close 23 schools in 2006 when he was the Education Minister. Mr Barr clearly did not think that this infrastructure should be maintained for future use. The closure of so many schools resolved a short-term political challenge, but has created a long-term problem, a problem that will continue to affect the people of Canberra until the government takes it seriously. Just one very small, example in terms of numbers is the ongoing impact this has had on the village of Tharwa, whose school was closed, and people in Tharwa still talk about the need for a school in their village. The school closures that were brought on by Mr Barr were supposed to fix education issues, but, Madam Speaker, they've only worsened them. The government was warned about closing schools at the time, but those warnings were ignored. On to the health infrastructure in Mr Pedersen's motion. I nearly laughed when I did see this, Madam Speaker, given in the week where the government has been under a lot of pressure. They've been on the back foot because of a lack of investment in health infrastructure. We're meant to talk about how fantastic the health infrastructure is. In the past fortnight alone, we've learned more about the government's knowledge since 2009 of the fire risk to the Women and Children's Hospital due to the cladding, the fact that more and more Canberrans are arriving in emergency and have to wait in hallways on trolleys to be seen because there isn't enough room. We've had the AECOM report released recently that the government tried to hide from the people of Canberra, which detailed 143 high risks associated with ageing infrastructure assets across the hospital and 4 extreme risks with serious concerns about the hospital's main switchboard and ageing helipad. Of course, that point was further reinforced, Madam Speaker, by the recent fire at the hospital, a risk that had been identified. So now we are here with Mr Pedersen's motion to welcome the investment in health infrastructure. Of course it's welcome. The question is, why hasn't it been done before now, when these risks have been well known for quite some time? Madam Speaker, also in my role as member for Brindabella, I'd like to point out that the people of Tuggeranong feel a bit neglected with respect to infrastructure, maybe particularly health infrastructure. And I wonder whether my counterpart members for Brindabella ever stand up, such as Mr Gentleman stands up for Tuggeranong in cabinet meetings, because the government never seems to invest much in Tuggeranong. Recently we've seen a very small investment in the town centre with a strange lighting feature in prime position, which looks like it's been welded in someone's backyard. Where's the artwork? Where's the feature piece that could have gone in this important spot in the town centre, Madam Speaker? Most other town centres have artwork. Why doesn't Tuggeranong deserve a piece of art in the middle of its town centre, I ask you? In conclusion, Madam Speaker, we have ageing education facilities, ageing health facilities, and from an ageing government. The government has been in for such a long time, they don't really have a clear infrastructure investment plan. We've seen this piecemeal approach, city to the lake, then something more exciting comes up over here and we completely change our mind about city to the lake. Infrastructure must be about maintenance of current facilities as well, not just donning a high-vis vest and a hard hat. The people of Canberra are crying out for better communication. They're crying out for more involvement in the decision-making process. And they want the average person on the street to have more of a voice in these big decisions that are being made on their behalf, not just their friends in the unions who are influencing what the government is doing. The government has for too long been a government who's talked the talk but not walked the walk. They've been full of rhetoric but lacking in substance. There is the opportunity for this government to take a step forward to communicate effectively, but it's an opportunity that the government must grasp with both hands, and they must listen. And it must be followed up with an ongoing commitment to evolve and adapt, but also always maintain the ideals that made Canberra a great place in the beginning. Just in the last minute available to me, Madam Speaker, I'd like to say that we won't be supporting, while we agree with the thrust of Mr Pedersen's motion, whilst it may be a little belated in terms of investment in health and education infrastructure, we won't be supporting Ms Lakuta's amendment, which I feel has changed the thrust of Mr Pedersen's motion away from infrastructure more specifically. And I have some general agreement with some of the points that Mr Barr raised when he spoke about why the government wouldn't be supporting it. But, so thanks, Mr Pedersen, for bringing forward a very interesting motion today. It's the talking the talk, not necessarily walking the walk, but there's still a chance for the government to start doing that. So we won't be supporting Ms Lakuta's amendment. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Lauder. The question is that Ms Lakuta's amendments be agreed to. Ms Orr?